Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today, something people don't like to say out loud. When a man pulls back, when his calls slow down, when his text gets shorter, when his presence starts fading, most women panic. They chase. They over-explain. They give more love, hoping it will pull him back. But the moment you decide to match his distance, instead of chasing it, everything changes inside that man. When a man creates distance, the first thing most people assume is that his feelings have faded, but that's not always the truth. Very often, distance is a test, even if he doesn't consciously admit it. Men don't always test with words, they test with space. He pulls back to see what happens next. Will you chase him? Will you panic? Will you overextend yourself, trying to hold on to something that should already be mutual? This is where everything quietly shifts. The moment you match his distance, instead of fighting it, you step out of the test and place the pressure right back where it belongs. A man expects pursuit when he withdraws, not because he's evil, but because experience has taught him that attention usually increases when he becomes less available. When that expectation is broken, his mind pauses. He notices the silence. He notices that you didn't ask 10 questions. You didn't demand reassurance. You didn't collapse emotionally. That pause creates discomfort, and discomfort forces awareness. Now he's thinking instead of coasting. Now he's wondering instead of assuming. Matching distance communicates strength without saying a word. It tells him you are not emotionally dependent on his presence to feel secure. That's powerful because men respect what they can't control easily. When you remove the predictable response, you remove his leverage. Suddenly, he's not leading the emotional pace anymore. The balance shifts, and that's when he starts paying attention to what he might lose instead of what he can delay. Distance also strips away illusions. When you stop filling the space with effort, excuses disappear. If his interest is real, the silence will pull him closer. He'll feel the gap and want to close it. If his interest was shallow, he'll stay comfortable in the distance, and that truth becomes clear without confrontation or heartbreak fueled by confusion. Either way, you gain clarity, and clarity is emotional freedom. Men often don't realize the value of emotional consistency until it's gone. When you match distance, he begins to feel the absence of your warmth, your check-ins, your emotional availability. And here's the key: men feel lost more intensely in quiet moments, not during arguments, not during drama, but when things get calm and empty. That's when realization hits. That's when memory starts replaying moments he took for granted. Matching distance is not manipulation, and it's not punishment. It's alignment. You're simply responding in the same emotional language he introduced. And that response speaks volumes. It says you understand your worth. It says you won't chase confusion. It says connection must be mutual or it doesn't exist. For a man who values you, that message wakes him up. For a man who doesn't, it releases you. And either outcome moves you forward without losing yourself. When a man notices that your energy has changed, his first reaction is not always emotional, it's mental. Men feel silence in their thoughts before they feel it in their hearts. When you stop calling, stop checking, stop explaining, his mind starts filling the gaps you once occupied. He replays moments, rereads old messages, remembers how consistent you were. And what shakes him is not anger, it's the interruption of certainty. He was certain you'd be there, certain you'd respond, certain you cared enough to keep the connection alive even when he didn't. When that certainty disappears, his inner balance is disturbed. Men are not raised to talk through emotions the way women are. They process internally. So when you match his distance, he doesn't immediately reach out. Instead, he goes quiet and observant. He starts noticing details he ignored before. Your absence becomes loud because it contrasts with your past presence. Silence from a woman who used to give freely doesn't feel like peace to a man. It feels like a question he can't answer out loud. At this stage, pride gets involved. His ego tries to protect him. He tells himself you're just busy. He tells himself it's nothing. He tells himself he doesn't care. But ego can only lie for so long, because every man knows the difference between a woman who is busy and a woman who has emotionally stepped back. Busy still checks in. Busy still cares. Distance feels colder, calmer, more resolved. That's when ego starts cracking. What unsettles him most is that you didn't announce the change. You didn't threaten to leave. You didn't argue. You simply adjusted. That forces him to confront something uncomfortable. You don't need him the way he assumed. And for a man, assumed importance is powerful. When that assumption fades, insecurity creeps in. He starts wondering if he misjudged the connection. He wonders if he waited too long. He wonders if someone else is now receiving the energy he stopped appreciating. Matching his distance also removes emotional noise. There's no drama to distract him, no tears to dismiss, no anger to blame, just quiet. And quiet gives truth space to surface. In that space, he realizes whether he actually wants you or just enjoyed being wanted by you. That realization is unavoidable. You didn't push him into it. His own silence did. Men often return at this point, not with grand words, but with subtle attempts to re-enter your space. A casual text, a random check-in, a memory shared. These are not accidents. They are temperature checks. He's testing whether the door is still open, whether you're still emotionally available. And how you respond tells him everything. Because now he's the one unsure. He's the one adjusting. He's the one reacting to the distance he thought wouldn't matter. When you match his distance, you take back emotional control without saying a word. You let his actions speak louder than his promises ever could. And in that silence, a man learns exactly what you meant to him, sometimes too late, sometimes just in time. When a man feels you matching his distance, the emotional shift doesn't hit him all at once. It unfolds in layers. At first, there's relief. He thinks, good, no pressure. Men often pull back because they feel overwhelmed, unsure, or afraid of expectations they don't know how to meet. So when you stop pushing, stop asking, stop reaching, he tells himself this is what he wanted: space, freedom, control. But that relief is temporary because it's built on the assumption that you're still there in the background, waiting quietly. And when that assumption starts to feel shaky, relief turns into unease. Unease grows because men are deeply affected by consistency. Even when they don't show it, emotional consistency creates safety for them. Your steady presence, your predictable care, your emotional availability become part of his internal structure. When you match his distance, that structure weakens. He doesn't panic immediately. Instead, there's a subtle discomfort he can't explain. He finds himself checking his phone more often, wondering why there's no message, noticing the quiet during moments when he used to hear from you. That's when distance starts working on him internally. What truly unsettles a man is not losing attention, it's losing influence. Influence means he mattered enough to move your emotions, your time, your focus. When you step back calmly, without bitterness, he realizes his influence has limits. You are not reacting anymore. And a woman who doesn't react is powerful. That power forces him to face something men often avoid: accountability. If you're no longer giving, it means something he did or didn't do created this shift. As the distance continues, comparison begins. He starts measuring other interactions against what he had with you. Conversations feel emptier. Attention from others feels lighter. He may still have options, but they don't carry the same emotional weight. This is when memory becomes sharp. He remembers how you listened, how you showed up without being asked, how you made him feel understood without pressure. Distance sharpens value because it removes access. Now comes the internal conflict. His pride tells him not to reach out. His heart tells him something important is slipping away. Men struggle here because reaching out feels like surrender, and surrender feels like weakness to someone taught to suppress emotion. So he hesitates, he waits, he watches. But every day of silence forces him closer to truth. Either he will step forward or he will emotionally detach fully. And that decision reveals his real capacity for love. If he steps forward, it's because the distance made him realize you were not just comfort, you were connection. If he doesn't, it's because he was only attached to the way you made him feel about himself. Matching distance removes illusion. It doesn't punish him, it clarifies him. It shows whether he values presence or just convenience, effort or just availability. The most powerful part is this: while he is processing, you are regaining yourself. Your emotions stabilize. Your focus returns. You stop shrinking to maintain closeness. And whether he comes back or not, you stand stronger. Because matching distance doesn't change who you are. It reminds you who you were before you overgave. When a man realizes that you are no longer chasing the connection, something deep inside him shifts. At first, he may not even be fully aware of it. He just feels a strange imbalance, like something familiar has gone quiet. Men often take emotional effort for granted when it is consistently available. Your attention, your patience, your willingness to bridge gaps became normal to him. When you match his distance, that normal disappears and the absence starts speaking louder than any argument ever could. What makes this reaction powerful is that you didn't demand change. You didn't issue ultimatums. You didn't ask for explanations. You simply mirrored his level of engagement. That forces him to confront his own behavior without defense. There is no one to blame, no emotional storm to hide behind, just a clear reflection of the energy he offered. And men understand reflection better than confrontation. It feels fair even when it's uncomfortable. As the space grows, a man begins to feel a subtle loss of control. Control doesn't mean ownership, it means predictability. He knew when you'd respond. He knew you'd make time. He knew you'd emotionally show up even when he didn't. When that predictability fades, uncertainty takes its place. He starts questioning his importance in your life. He wonders if he misread the connection. He wonders if you are slowly detaching. That uncertainty is unsettling because men often measure value by their impact. When impact is unclear, insecurity rises. This is when emotional awareness begins to form. In the quiet, he notices what's missing. Not the messages, not the calls, but the feeling, the comfort of being understood without explaining himself, the sense of being chosen without demanding it. Men don't always recognize emotional safety while they have it, but they feel its absence immediately. And that absence forces him to reflect on what he contributed or failed to contribute to the connection. Matching distance also changes how he views you. You are no longer the one waiting, hoping, adjusting. You become the woman who knows when to step back. That shift commands respect, even if he never says it out loud. Respect grows when a man sees that a woman can walk away emotionally without bitterness. Calm withdrawal signals self-worth. And self-worth is something men instinctively respond to. Now the truth surfaces. If his feelings are genuine, the distance pulls him forward. He reaches out not to pass time, but to reconnect. He becomes more intentional because he understands access is no longer guaranteed. If his feelings were shallow, he fades quietly. And in that fading, you lose confusion, not love. The power of matching distance is that it removes guesswork. You stop analyzing his silence because his response or lack of it becomes the answer. And while he processes the shift, you reclaim your emotional balance. You stop pouring into uncertainty. You stop negotiating your worth. And in that space, clarity replaces anxiety, strength replaces waiting, and peace replaces the need to be chosen. When you reach the point where you no longer chase a man who has created distance, the dynamic quietly flips. At first, he assumes it's temporary. He tells himself you'll reach out soon, that you'll miss him, that this calm space is just a pause before things go back to how they were. Men often rely on emotional patterns more than they admit. When a woman has consistently been present, supportive, and available, that presence feels permanent to him. So when you match his distance, his initial confidence is built on habit, not reality. As time passes and your silence holds steady, his emotions begin to surface in unexpected ways. He starts feeling restless without knowing why. Moments that used to feel comfortable now feel empty. He checks his phone without realizing it. He replays interactions, not searching for arguments, but searching for reassurance that he still matters. What troubles him isn't anger or rejection, it's the loss of emotional certainty. Men are deeply affected when they no longer know where they stand. Then comes the internal struggle between pride and desire. His pride tells him not to reach out first. It tells him that if you cared, you'd be the one to close the gap. But his desire wants clarity. It wants connection. This tension creates emotional pressure because men are not taught how to sit with unresolved feelings. Silence forces him to confront emotions he may have been avoiding by staying distant in the first place. Matching his distance also removes emotional dependency from the connection. He realizes you are no longer waiting on his attention to feel secure. That realization can be unsettling because it shifts the power balance. A man may not consciously seek control, but he feels safest when he believes he has emotional influence. When you calmly step back, you show him that your stability comes from within, not from his behavior. That strength changes how he views you. As the days go on, memory sharpens. He remembers the way you listened without judgment, the way you showed up without being asked, the way you offered emotional safety instead of chaos. Other interactions don't compare because emotional depth can't be replaced quickly. That's when realization hits hardest. He understands that what he lost wasn't attention, it was connection. At this stage, a man reveals his truth. If he values you deeply, he will move toward you with intention, not excuses. He'll communicate more clearly. He'll close the distance he created. If he doesn't, it means the connection relied more on your effort than his commitment. And that truth, while painful, is freeing. Matching distance is not about strategy. It's about self-respect. It allows you to stop pouring energy into uncertainty and start honoring your emotional boundaries. While he is processing the shift, you are reclaiming your peace. You're no longer questioning your worth or analyzing silence. You're grounded, and whether he steps forward or fades away, you remain whole. When a man realizes that the emotional space he created is now being mirrored back to him, the impact runs deeper than most people expect. At first, he may barely register it. Men often move through life assuming emotional access will remain available, especially when a woman has been consistent, patient, and understanding. Your presence felt steady, reliable, almost permanent. So when you quietly pull back to match his distance, his mind initially tells him nothing has changed. But the heart notices before the ego does. The first real shift happens in silence. Silence removes reassurance. It removes emotional cushioning. Without your messages, your concern, your warmth, there is nothing softening the edges of his day. That absence doesn't create immediate panic. It creates awareness. He starts noticing moments where you used to exist emotionally, small gaps, empty pauses. And those pauses begin to echo. Men don't always respond to emotional loss with sadness right away. They respond with restlessness, distraction, and confusion. As time goes on, his sense of emotional control weakens. Control doesn't mean manipulation. It means familiarity. He was familiar with your reactions, your availability, your forgiveness. When those reactions stop, uncertainty enters. He no longer knows how he stands with you. And for a man, not knowing where he stands can feel more unsettling than rejection. Rejection is clear. Distance is ambiguous. Ambiguity forces him to think, and thinking leads to self-examination.